My husband is currently sleeping on his mother's plastic-covered sofa, convinced that a dishonest jeweler scammed him out of $15,000. He believes his mistress dumped him because he is a cheapskate who tried to pass off glass as sapphires. He has no idea that the real jewels are currently sitting in a safety deposit box under my maiden name. He thinks he is the victim of a bad business deal, but he is actually just the victim of his own wife. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. It started with a chirp, a high-pitched, electronic squeak that sliced through the silence of the bedroom at exactly 3 a.m. I lay there for 10 minutes, staring at the ceiling fan, praying it was a hallucination. It wasn't. It was the smoke detector in the hallway, the one with the battery that had been dying for a week. Julian didn't move. Of course he didn't. He was lying on his back, mouth slightly open, letting out a soft, rhythmic snore that sounded like a cat purring. I looked at him and felt a sudden, irrational spike of anger. I had asked him to change that battery 3 times. 3 times he had given me that patient, condescending smile, the one that made me feel like a nagging parent, and told me he would handle it. He hadn't handled it. He was asleep, dreaming of whatever marketing executives dream of, while I was awake, teeth clenched, waiting for the next ear-piercing chirp. Chirp. I threw the duvet off. The air in the bedroom was freezing. Our heating system was another thing on the Julian will handle it list that remained unhandled. I slid my feet into my slippers and padded out into the hallway. The little red light on the ceiling blinked at me, mocking my insomnia. I needed a 9-volt battery and a ladder. Both were in the garage. I didn't want to go into the garage. The garage was Julian's domain, a sacred space of organized chaos that usually just meant piles of half-finished projects and boxes he refused to throw away. But if I didn't stop that noise, I was going to scream. And if I screamed, Julian would wake up grumpy, and a grumpy Julian was a 2-day ordeal of passive-aggressive sighs and comments about how some of us have high-pressure jobs. I opened the door to the garage, and the smell hit me. Cold concrete, motor oil, and damp cardboard. I flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. Perfect. The bulb was blown. I used the flashlight on my phone, the beam cutting through the dusty air. I could see the ladder buried behind a wall of storage bins labeled Taxes 2018 and MISC cables. I started shoving boxes aside. My shin connected with something hard and metal, and I bit my tongue to keep from cursing. Why did we have so much stuff? We were 2 people in a 3-bedroom house, yet we were drowning in objects. I pulled at the ladder, but it was snagged on a bungee cord wrapped around a bicycle we hadn't ridden in 4 years. "Come on," I whispered, yanking it. The bike wobbled. The stack of bins next to it teetered. I froze, holding my breath, watching the tower of plastic sway. It tipped. I lunged forward to catch it, but I was too slow. 2 bins crashed to the floor, spilling their contents everywhere. Old Christmas lights, extension cords, and a heavy red metal toolbox clattered onto the concrete. The noise was deafening in the quiet house. I stood there, heart hammering against my ribs, waiting for the door to open, waiting for Julian to storm out and ask what the hell I was doing destroying his workspace. I waited 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. Just the muffled chirp of the smoke detector from inside the house. He slept through it. He slept through everything. I sighed, kneeling on the cold floor to clean up the mess before morning. If Julian saw this, he'd launch into a lecture about respecting his property. I started throwing wrenches and screwdrivers back into the red toolbox. It was his good toolbox, the one he locked, the one he polished like it was a sports car. It had popped open on impact. I grabbed a handful of sockets and tossed them in. Then I saw it. It didn't belong. In a tray filled with greasy drill bits, wire strippers, and a roll of electrical tape, there sat a pristine, midnight blue, velvet box. It was wedged between a hammer and a pair of pliers, as if someone had shoved it there in a panic. I stopped moving. My brain tried to process the image. A jewelry box? In the garage? In the toolbox? It made no sense. Julian was meticulous. He had a safe in the master closet for important documents and valuables. He had a drawer in his nightstand for sentimental items. The toolbox was for dirty, manual labor. I reached out and picked it up. It was heavy. Much heavier than it looked. The velvet was soft against my callous thumb. It wasn't a ring box. It was too large, too flat. A necklace box, or maybe a bracelet. Why was it here? My mind instantly started cycling through scenarios, the overthinking engine kicking into high gear. Was it empty? Was it something he bought for his mother and forgot to wrap? No. Patricia's birthday was in August. Was it something of mine he was getting repaired? No, I hadn't lost anything. Then the date hit me. December 19th. Our 5th anniversary was 2 days away. The breath caught in my throat. 5 years. The wood anniversary, technically, but we had joked about doing something big. We had talked about it months ago, back before the distance started, back before he started working late every single night. No way, I whispered. He couldn't have. He wouldn't. We had been so cold to each other lately. I had been convinced he was pulling away, falling out of love. I had spent the last 3 weeks crying in the shower because he wouldn't look me in the eye during dinner. And here, hidden in the one place he knew I never looked, because I hated the garage, was a velvet box. My hands were shaking. I shouldn't open it. It was a surprise. If I opened it, I would ruin the moment. I would be the snooping wife who couldn't wait. I should put it back. I should close the toolbox, stack the bins, fix the smoke detector, and go back to bed. But I couldn't. I physically couldn't. The curiosity was a physical ache in my chest. I needed to know if I was wrong about him. I needed to know if he still cared. I looked at the door to the house one last time to make sure he wasn't standing there. Then, with trembling fingers, I pried the lid open. I gasped. I actually gasped, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a statement. Resting on the white satin cushion was a necklace that looked like it belonged in a museum or on the neck of a movie star attending the Oscars. A delicate chain of white gold held a pendant that was terrifyingly beautiful. A massive teardrop sapphire, dark and deep as the ocean, surrounded by a halo of glittering diamonds. I stared at it, my flashlight beam making the stones dance with blue fire. This wasn't a few $100s from the mall. This was serious money. This was I love you money. This was I'm sorry for working so much money. I felt a wave of nausea, but it was the good kind, the kind that comes from relief washing over anxiety. I had been so stupid. I had been so paranoid. All those nights he came home late, smelling of stress and exhaustion, I had accused him of checking out. I had nagged him about the dishes, about the laundry, about the lack of intimacy, and all this time, he had been saving. He had been planning. "Oh, Julian," I whispered, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. He remembered the conversation we had 2 years ago, walking past that vintage jeweler in the city. I had pointed at a sapphire pendant in the window, much smaller than this one, and said it was the most elegant thing I'd ever seen. He had just nodded and checked his watch. I thought he ignored me. He hadn't ignored me. He had filed it away. Guilt crashed into me like a semi-truck. I had been checking his location on Snap Map. I had been smelling his shirts like a crazy person. I had been complaining to my best friend Drea that our marriage was dead in the water. And here was the proof that I was wrong. He hid it in the toolbox because he knew I'd never find it there. It was brilliant. It was thoughtful. I reached out to touch the stone, but stopped myself. I didn't want to leave fingerprints on the gems. I needed to close this. I needed to put it back exactly how I found it. I couldn't let him know I knew. I had to let him have his moment. He wanted to surprise me. I would let him surprise me. I would act shocked. I would cry. I would tell him it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, and I would mean it. I carefully snapped the lid shut. The click sounded loud in the garage. I nestled the box back into the grease tray, wedging it between the pliers and the hammer just as it had been. I closed the red toolbox and latched it. I restacked the bins, trying to align the dust outlines on the floor so it didn't look disturbed. I grabbed the ladder, changed the battery in the smoke detector, and put everything back. My hands were covered in gray dust, and my feet were numb with cold, but my heart was soaring. I went back to bed and curled up next to my husband. He was still snoring, oblivious. I kissed his shoulder, smelling the faint scent of his body wash. "I love you," I whispered into the dark. "I'm sorry I doubted you." He didn't wake up. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. The anxiety that usually sat on my chest like a heavy cat was gone, replaced by a buzzing excitement. I made coffee. I made the good coffee, grinding the beans myself, making enough noise to gently wake Julian up. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to see his face and know that behind that grumpy morning mask was a man who had bought me a sapphire necklace. He shuffled into the kitchen at 7:30, dressed in his navy suit. He looked good, tired but good. He went straight for the coffee pot, not looking at me. "Good morning," I said, leaning against the counter, smiling. I couldn't help it. I was beaming. He grunted, "Morning." He poured a mug and immediately pulled out his phone. His thumb scrolled rapidly. He was frowning. I walked over and wrapped my arms around his waist from behind, resting my chin on his shoulder. "Sleep okay?" The smoke detector finally stopped chirping. He stiffened. He didn't lean back into me. He actually pulled away slightly, stepping to the side to reach for the sugar. "Yeah, good. Thanks for handling that." His tone was dismissive, professional, like he was thanking a janitor for emptying the trash. I tried not to let it sting. He was probably stressed about the surprise. Keeping a secret that big must be nerve-wracking. "You smell nice," I said, trying to recover the moment. I leaned in to sniff his neck. I froze. Underneath the smell of his usual sandalwood soap, there was something else. It was faint, but it was there. A sickly sweet scent. Vanilla and something musky, like warm sugar cookies and cheap incense. It wasn't my perfume. I wore florals. I hated vanilla. "What's that smell?" I asked, pulling back. Julian turned to me, his eyes darting to the side for a fraction of a second before locking onto mine with a look of practiced confusion. "What smell?" "You smell like vanilla and musk." He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Jade, are you serious? It's probably the air freshener in the Uber I took home last night, or the office cleaning supplies. They changed the floor wax." He looked at me with that expression, the one he used when he wanted me to feel irrational, a mix of pity and annoyance. "You look tired, babe," he said, his voice dropping into that smooth, caring register that I used to love but now felt slimy. "Are you getting sick? You have those bags under your eyes again." I instinctively touched my face. I was up at 3 fixing the alarm. "See?" He reached out and tucked a stray curl behind my ear, but his touch was clinical, devoid of warmth. "You push yourself too hard. You get paranoid and stressed when you're tired. Just relax today, okay? Don't overthink things." Toxic benevolence. He was doing it again, making my legitimate question about a strange scent into a symptom of my own fragility. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. I had to focus on the necklace. The necklace in the garage. He was acting weird because he was hiding something good. That had to be it. "Are you going to be late tonight?" He checked his watch, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, it's end of quarter crunch. The team is falling apart without me. I'll probably grab dinner at the office." "Oh," my heart sank. "Okay. Well, don't work too hard." "I do it for us, Jade," he said, grabbing his briefcase. "You know that, right? I'm building our future." He pecked me on the cheek, a dry, quick contact of lips to skin, and walked out the door. I watched him go, touching the spot where he kissed me. The smell of vanilla lingered in the kitchen air for a second before fading. It's just floor wax, I told myself. He bought you sapphires. Focus on the sapphires. By 5 o'clock, I had convinced myself that I needed to make an effort too. If he was working this hard for us, I couldn't just sit around being mopey. I decided to make his favorite meal, roast chicken with lemon and rosemary with the potatoes cut into those tiny cubes he liked. It was a peace offering, a pre-anniversary celebration. I left work early, racing to the grocery store. I spent $40 on organic chicken and fresh herbs. I bought a bottle of the Cabernet he pretended to know everything about. I went home and scrubbed the kitchen until it sparkled. I set the table with the cloth napkins, not the paper ones. I was humming as I rubbed butter under the chicken skin. I was picturing the evening. He would come home, smell the food, and soften. We would drink wine. Maybe he would give me the necklace early. Maybe he couldn't wait. I put the chicken in the oven at 6. The house began to smell amazing. I went upstairs and changed out of my work clothes into a dress. Nothing fancy, just a soft green wrap dress he used to say made my eyes pop. I put on lipstick. I waited. At 7 o'clock, the chicken was golden brown and crackling. I pulled it out to rest. At 7:15, I checked my phone. No texts. At 7:30, I started to feel that familiar tightening in my stomach. The overthinking engine sputtered to life. Maybe traffic is bad. Maybe he's in a meeting and can't text. Maybe he stopped to get flowers. At 7:45, my phone buzzed. I lunged for it, nearly knocking over the wine glass. It was a text from Julian. Stuck in crisis meeting. VP is tearing everyone a new one. Won't be home for hours. Don't wait up. I stared at the screen. The letters blurred. Crisis meeting. I looked at the chicken. It was cooling on the counter, the skin starting to wrinkle. The potatoes were getting soggy. The table was set for 2, looking pathetic and eager in the dim light. I didn't reply. I couldn't. If I replied, I would say something nasty. I would say, "I made your favorite dinner, you jerk." Or, "How long does a meeting take?" But then I thought of the necklace. If I snapped at him, I became the ungrateful wife again. I became the burden. He was working to pay for that sapphire. He was sitting in a boardroom getting yelled at by a VP so he could put diamonds around my neck. "It's okay," I said aloud to the empty kitchen. My voice sounded small and wobbly. I walked over to the counter and tore a leg off the chicken with my bare hands. I stood there in my nice dress, eating the lukewarm meat over the sink like a rat. It tasted like ash. I didn't touch the wine. I wrapped the rest of the food in foil, shoved it in the fridge, and turned off the lights. I fell asleep on the couch with the TV playing reruns of a sitcom I hated. I woke up to the sound of a key scratching against the lock. I checked the time. 11:42. The door swung open and Julian stumbled in. He didn't see me in the dark. He kicked off his shoes, sending one flying into the wall with a loud thud. He groaned, rubbing his face. "Julian," I asked, sitting up. He jumped, clutching his chest. "Jesus, Jade, you scared the hell out of me. Why are you sitting in the dark?" "I fell asleep," I said. "Are you okay?" I walked over to him. The smell hit me instantly. It wasn't floor wax, it wasn't cleaning supplies. He smelled like gin. Expensive, botanical gin. And underneath that, stronger than this morning, was the vanilla. It was clinging to his suit jacket like a second skin. "You were drinking?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I thought you were in a meeting." "Client dinner," he slurred slightly, pushing past me toward the bedroom. "After the meeting. Had to smooth things over. You know how it is." "You said you were with the VP." "VP was there too. God, Jade, stop interrogating me. I'm exhausted." He went into the bedroom and didn't even turn on the light. He stripped off his jacket and tossed it on the floor. He sat on the edge of the bed and struggled with his socks. I stood in the doorway, watching him. The overthinking engine was screaming now. Client dinners don't leave you smelling like a vanilla candle. Client dinners don't make you look at your wife with dead eyes. He flopped back onto the pillows, fully clothed in his dress shirt and slacks. Within 30 seconds, his breathing evened out. He was out cold. I crept closer. His phone was in his hand. It was resting loosely in his palm, his fingers curled around it. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic, painful rhythm. "Check it." A voice in my head whispered, "You found the necklace. You found the good surprise. Maybe this is nothing, but you have to know." I reached out, my hand trembling so bad I thought I'd drop it. I gently pried the phone from his grip. He didn't stir. I slid out of the room and into the hallway bathroom, closing the door and locking it. I sat on the toilet lid, the cold porcelain seeping through my dress. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. It was locked, obviously. A 4-digit PIN. I tried his birthday. 8. Incorrect passcode. I tried our anniversary. 12/19. Incorrect passcode. My hands were sweating now, making the phone slippery. Why would he change it? It used to be our anniversary. I tried his mother's birthday. 405. Incorrect passcode. I tried the last 4 digits of his social. 9921. Incorrect passcode. The screen flashed red. iPhone unavailable. Try again in 1 minute. Damn it, I hissed, staring at the timer counting down. 59 seconds. 58. I could feel panic rising in my throat. What if he woke up? What if he realized the phone was gone? I stared at the black screen, seeing my own terrified reflection. This wasn't me. I wasn't a spy. I wasn't a snoop. But the smell of vanilla was stuck in my nose. I waited for the minute to pass. I had one more guess before it locked me out for 5 minutes, or 15. One more chance. I thought about numbers. His college graduation? No. His frat number? No. Maybe it was a pattern. Maybe it wasn't a date. The timer hit 0. The keypad reappeared. I hovered my thumb over the screen. I tried. Zanver. Incorrect passcode. iPhone unavailable. Try again in 5 minutes. I let out a sob of frustration. I couldn't wait 5 minutes. He might wake up. I had to put it back. I wiped the screen on my dress to remove the smudge marks. I crept back into the bedroom. Julian was still snoring, but he had shifted. His hand was now under the pillow. I carefully placed the phone on the nightstand right next to his head. I stood there for a moment, watching him sleep, feeling like a stranger in my own marriage. I didn't find anything. I failed. But as I crawled into bed, keeping as far away from him as possible, I knew one thing for sure. The necklace in the garage was the only thing keeping me from packing a bag and leaving right now. I clung to the image of those sapphires like a lifeline. He loves me, I told myself. He bought the necklace. He loves me. I just needed to survive until the anniversary. The next morning, the house felt brittle, like a glass ornament about to shatter. I was standing in the kitchen, gripping a mug of black coffee so hard my knuckles were white. The overthinking engine was running on fumes, cycling through the failed passcode attempts from the night before. Wait 12, 1219, 0405. Why had he changed it? People don't change their passcodes after 5 years unless they have something to hide, or unless they're paranoid about security. Maybe it was work. Maybe the crisis meeting required a security update. I heard the toilet flush upstairs. Then the heavy, dragging footsteps of a man with a hangover. Julian appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked wrecked. His skin was gray, his eyes bloodshot, and he was still wearing yesterday's dress slacks and undershirt. He groaned and pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes. "Coffee," he croaked. "Please." I didn't move to pour it for him. Usually I would have. Usually I would have had a glass of water and 2 ibuprofen waiting on the counter. Today I just pointed to the pot with my chin. "It's fresh," I said. My voice sounded flat, robotic. He shambled over, poured a cup, and leaned against the counter, facing away from me. He fished his phone out of his pocket immediately. It was like a reflex. He couldn't be awake for 30 seconds without checking it. I watched him. I was standing by the stove, pretending to wipe down a grease splatter that wasn't there. Behind him, the microwave door, a sleek black glass pane, acted like a dark mirror. He held the phone up, angling it slightly away from me, paranoid. "Rough night?" I asked, testing the waters. "Brutal," he muttered, staring at the screen. "Clients are vampires. They suck the life out of you." I watched the reflection in the microwave. It was distorted, ghost-like, but I could see the glow of his screen illuminating his thumb. He swiped up. The keypad appeared. My breath hitched. "Watch his thumb," I told myself. "Don't look at him. Look at the glass." His thumb moved to the top left corner. 1. Then it tapped the exact center. 5. Then the top right. 3. Then the center again. 5. 1, 5, 3, 5. It happened in less than a second, a quick practiced rhythm. Tap, 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 tap. The screen unlocked. He immediately opened a messaging app, not his texts, but the green icon of a secure chat app, and started typing furiously. "Who are you texting this early?" I asked, turning around to face him. He jumped, locking the phone instantly and shoving it into his pocket. The guilt was so loud it was practically screaming. "Just the team," he said, his voice jumping an octave. "Checking damage control from last night. I gotta jump in the shower. I have to be in the office by 9. He didn't look at me. He grabbed his coffee and bolted for the hallway. 1, 5, 3, 5. I repeated the numbers in my head like a mantra. 1535. It wasn't a birthday. It wasn't an anniversary. It was random. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was her birthday, or the day they met. The thought made my stomach cramp. "Stop it," I scolded myself. "You found the necklace. The necklace is for you. The code is just a code." But I knew I was lying. I waited at the bottom of the stairs until I heard the shower turn on. The pipes in our old house groaned, followed by the steady whoosh of water hitting the fiberglass tub. I took a deep breath, counting to 10 to steady my heart rate. I felt like a criminal in my own home. I felt dirty, but I also felt a desperate, clawing need for the truth. I walked up the stairs, skipping the squeaky step on the third riser out of habit. The bedroom door was open. The bathroom door was closed, steam already seeping from the crack at the bottom. Julian's phone was sitting on the dresser this time. He hadn't taken it into the bathroom. That was a mistake. Or maybe he felt safe because I was the nagging wife who didn't know the code. I picked it up. It was warm. I looked at the bathroom door. The water was running loud and hard. Julian took long showers, 15 minutes minimum. I had time, but my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the device. 1, 5, 3, 5. I tapped the numbers. The lock icon at the top of the screen clicked open. My chest tightened. It worked. I was in. I didn't celebrate. There was no joy, only a sick sense of vertigo. I swiped to his recent apps. The secure messaging app was the last one used. I tapped it. It required Face ID. "Damn it," I whispered, panic flaring. I couldn't use his face. He was in the shower. I tried to swipe it away, but then I saw the regular text messages. There was a red badge on the green icon, 2 unread messages. I opened the standard messages. The list was mostly mundane. Mom. Gary from accounting. Domino's Pizza. But fourth down on the list was a thread with a contact simply named L. No last name, no emoji, just L. The preview of the last message read, "Hey, can't believe you did that, you're crazy." I tapped the thread. The world didn't stop spinning, but it certainly slowed down. The sounds of the house, the shower, the refrigerator hum, the wind outside, faded into a dull roar in my ears. All I could see were the gray and blue bubbles on the screen. I scrolled up, my thumb trembling. Yesterday, 4:15 p.m. Julian, meeting ran late. Miss you already. L, you saw me 2 hours ago. Focus on work, big guy. Julian, can't. All I can think about is you in that red dress. You're dangerous. Yesterday, 6:30 p.m. L, Are we still on for the 17th? I took the day off. Julian, of course, it's our 6-month anniversary. I wouldn't miss it for the world. L, did you get the thing? The blue thing? Julian, the necklace. Yes, it's safe in the garage, hidden where the roommate won't find it. I stopped breathing. The roommate. He called me the roommate. I felt a physical blow to my chest like I'd been kicked by a horse. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of building a life, paying bills, nursing him through the flu, planning a future. And I was the roommate. I forced myself to keep reading, even though tears were blurring my vision. L, you sure it's sapphires? I don't want cheap stuff, Julian. My ex gave me garnets once. I dumped him the next day. Julian, it's the real deal, baby. Cost me 15 grand, custom made. You're gonna shine like a queen. It matches your eyes. $15,000. I put a hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. $15,000. That was our renovation money. That was the money we had been saving for a down payment on a bigger house, the one with a yard for the kids we kept delaying. He had drained it for a necklace, for her. I scrolled down to the messages from this morning, sent while I was making him coffee. Today, 7:45. Julian. Ugh, headache from hell. Roommate is hovering. She's asking about the smell. L. LOL. Did you tell her it's my new perfume? Vanilla Vixen? Julian. I told her it was floor wax. She bought it. She's so gullible. She thinks I'm stressed about work. L. What did you get her for her anniversary? Isn't that coming up? Julian. Yeah, the 19th. I picked up some lotion set from the clearance bin at the drugstore. Spent like $20. She won't know the difference. She doesn't take care of herself anymore anyway. Waste of money to buy her nice things. I stared at the words. She doesn't take care of herself anymore. Waste of money. I looked down at my body. I was wearing a silk robe. I went to the gym 3 times a week. I dyed my hair to cover the grays. I tried so hard. But to him, I was just a bad investment, a depreciating asset. Bile rose in my throat, hot and acidic. I dropped the phone on the bed and ran to the master bathroom sink, not the one he was showering in, but the vanity outside the door. I dry-heaved over the porcelain, my stomach contracting violently. Nothing came out but spit and the bitter taste of coffee. I gripped the edge of the granite counter, staring at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, blotchy. My eyes were wide and terrified. I looked like a ghost. He hates you, the voice in my head whispered. He doesn't just love someone else, he despises you. The shower water turned off. The sudden silence was like a gunshot. Panic isn't the right word. It was primal terror. If he found me like this, crying with his phone unlocked, he would spin it. He would gaslight me. He would say I misunderstood. Or worse, he would leave right now, take the necklace, and disappear to be with Elle. I couldn't let him know. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed leverage. I lunged back to the bed. I grabbed my own phone from my pocket. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely open the camera app. I hovered my phone over his screen. Snap. 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 I took photos of the text about the roommate, the text about the $15,000, the text about the clearance lotion. The bathroom door handle jiggled. "Jade," Julian called out from inside. "Can you grab me a towel? I forgot one." "Yeah," I yelled back. My voice sounded strangled, hysterical. "1 second." I swiped his phone back to the home screen. I locked it. I wiped the screen on the duvet cover to remove my fingerprints. I placed it back on the dresser exactly at the angle it was before, slightly askew, near his wallet. I shoved my phone into my robe pocket. I grabbed a fresh towel from the linen closet, taking deep, shuddering breaths to steady my core. I opened the bathroom door. Julian was standing in the shower stall, dripping wet, peering out through the glass. "Here," I said, holding out the towel. I didn't look at his face. I looked at his knees. "Thanks," he said, opening the door and grabbing it. Steam billowed out, smelling of his sandalwood soap and the lingering, faint scent of vanilla that seemed to ooze from his pores. "You okay? You sound out of breath." "Just running around," I lied. "I'm going to be late for work. I have to go." I turned and fled before he could see the tears streaming down my face. I didn't even shower. I threw on clothes. I don't even remember what I put on. Black slacks and a gray sweater, I think, and grabbed my purse. I left the house without saying goodbye. I got into my car, a 5-year-old sedan that needed an oil change, and backed out of the driveway. I drove on autopilot for the first 10 minutes, my brain completely numb. It was like I was floating above my body, watching a woman drive to work while her life imploded. But then, as I merged onto the highway, the numbness shattered. The reality hit me all at once. The roommate, the 15 grand, the lotion. I started screaming. It wasn't a movie scream. It was a guttural, ugly sound that tore at my throat. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel over and over again. "I hate you! I hate you! I hate you!" Tears filled my eyes, blurring the road. A red pickup truck honked at me as I drifted into the left lane. I jerked the wheel back, the car swerving violently. My tires screeched against the asphalt, my heart hammered in my ears. "You're going to kill yourself," I thought. "You're going to crash and die, and he'll give the funeral insurance money to her." The thought made me slam on the brakes. I pulled onto the shoulder, narrowly missing a mile marker sign. I threw the car into park and buried my face in my hands. I sat there for 20 minutes, hazard lights blinking, sobbing until I couldn't breathe. I watched the cars fly by, people going to their jobs, living their normal lives where their husbands didn't call them roommate. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't sit in a meeting and pretend I cared about quarterly projections. I needed help. I picked up my phone and dialed Drea. "Hey, girl," Drea answered on the first ring, her voice bright and cheery. "What's up? You never call this early." "Drea," I choked out. "I need you to meet me. Now." There was a pause. The cheer vanished from her voice instantly. "Where are you? Are you hurt?" I'm at the gas station off exit 4. I can't breathe, Drea. Julian, Stay there," she commanded. "I'm leaving work. I'll meet you at the mall food court in 30 minutes. Don't drive if you can't see straight." "I have photos," I whispered. "I have photos of the necklace." The mall was quiet at 10:30 on a Tuesday. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, reflecting off the polished terrazzo floors. I sat at a wobbly metal table in the corner of the food court, staring at a cup of tea I hadn't touched. Drea arrived looking like a warrior. She was wearing her manager's uniform from the high-end department store where she worked in the jewelry department. She marched over, slammed her purse on the table, and sat down. "Talk," she said. I didn't speak. I just handed her my phone. I had the photo of the necklace from the garage open, the one I took with the flashlight beam hitting the sapphire. Drea took the phone. She squinted at the screen. She zoomed in. Her eyebrows shot up. "Jade," she said slowly, "where did you find this?" "In his toolbox," I whispered. "In the garage." "Okay, wow, that's a piece." "It's a fake, right?" I asked, a tiny desperate part of me hoping. "It's just costume jewelry, like $50? Drea shook her head. She looked grim. "No, honey, I work with this stuff every day. Look at the setting. See the prongs? That's platinum or white gold. And that stone, the saturation is perfect. Even in a bad photo, you can see the fire." She handed the phone back to me gently. "If that's a natural sapphire, and it looks like it is, and with that diamond halo, you're looking at $12,000, maybe $15,000. Retail." I closed my eyes. Hearing the number out loud made it real. 15,000. "He told her it was 15, I said, my voice trembling. "Her?" Drea froze. "Who is her?" I swiped to the next photo, the screenshot of the text message. "It's the real deal, baby. Cost me 15 grand. I picked up some lotion set from the clearance bin. She won't know the difference. Drea read it. Her face went through a journey of emotions, confusion, shock, and then pure, unadulterated rage. Her jaw clenched so hard I thought her teeth would crack. "He called you the roommate," she hissed. She looked up at me, her eyes blazing. "Jade, I am going to kill him. I am going to drive to his office and I am going to beat him with a tire iron." "No," I said, wiping my face with a rough paper napkin. "No tire irons." "He stole 15 grand from you. That's your house money. That's your life." Drea slammed her hand on the table, making the tea jump. "You have to call a lawyer right now. We are going to freeze the accounts." "If I freeze the accounts, he'll know," I said. "He'll know I know. He'll hide the necklace. He'll say he lost it. He'll deny everything." "So what?" Drea asked, incredulous. "You're going to let him give it to her?" I looked at the photo of the necklace again. The blue stone mocked me. It was beautiful. It was cold. It was everything our marriage wasn't. "No," I said slowly. A cold clarity was starting to settle over the chaos in my brain. "I'm not going to let him give it to her, but I'm not going to just take it back either." I looked at Drea. "You know a guy who makes replicas, right? For insurance claims?" Drea blinked. "Yeah, old man Oscar. He's a genius with cubic zirconia." "Why?" "Because," I said, a dark idea forming in the back of my mind. "Julian spent $15,000 on a sapphire. I think it's only fair that he gets what he paid for. And I think it's only fair that his girlfriend gets exactly what she deserves." "You want to swap it?" Drea whispered, a slow grin spreading across her face. "I want to swap it," I confirmed. "And I want to keep the 15 grand. Drea had to go back to work. She was on her lunch break and her manager was already texting her with passive-aggressive emojis. I was alone again. I sat in my car in the mall parking garage, the engine idling, staring at the concrete wall. I needed to see the damage. I needed to see the empty space where our future house used to be. I pulled up our banking app. My thumb hovered over the icon. I felt a sick sort of anticipation, like pressing on a bruise to see how deep it goes. I tapped it. The blue wheel spun and spun. "Please," I begged silently. "Just show me." A pop-up appeared. "For your security, we have updated our terms. A 6-digit verification code has been sent to the primary mobile number ending in 8812. 8812. That was Julian's number. "No," I said aloud, hitting the steering wheel. "No, no, no." I stared at the screen, watching the timer count down for the code entry. I couldn't get in. I was the secondary account holder. He had set it up that way for simplicity 3 years ago. At the time, I thought he was being helpful, taking on the mental load of managing our finances. Now I realized he was building a wall. If I tried to log in, his phone would ding. He would see the code. He would know I was checking the accounts in the middle of a Tuesday. He would text me immediately. "Everything okay, babe? Why are you in the bank app?" I couldn't risk it. I hit cancel. My heart was racing. I was locked out of my own money. I had $15 in cash in my wallet and a credit card that I was 90% sure he monitored. I felt trapped, suffocated. It wasn't just about the cheating anymore. It was about the control. He had the money, the passwords, the house. I had a car that needed an oil change and a husband who called me his roommate. I couldn't go home. I couldn't go back to work. I put the car in reverse. There was only one way to see that statement without alerting him. I had to go to the branch, show my ID, and pray the teller didn't ask why I was crying in the middle of the day. The bank smelled like stale coffee and floor cleaner. It was dead silent, the kind of silence that makes you feel like everyone is listening to your thoughts. I stood in line behind an elderly man who was arguing about a $3 fee. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and say, "My husband spent $15,000 on a Mistress, move your ass." But I stood there, clutching my purse, trying to look like a normal wife running a normal errand. Next, the teller called. Her name tag said Brenda. She had long acrylic nails that clicked against the counter like little daggers. "Hi," I said, my voice cracking. I cleared my throat. "I need to print a transaction history for my joint savings account for the last 30 days. Brenda looked at me over her glasses. She looked at my red, puffy eyes. She looked at the way my hands were twisting the strap of my bag. She didn't smile. "ID and debit card," she said flatly. I handed them over. She typed. Click, clack, click. She frowned at the screen. "I need a verbal password," she said. "The account is flagged for high security verification." My stomach dropped. "Password? I don't know. He sets up the passwords." "I can't access the details without it, ma'am." "It's my money too," I snapped, loud enough that the security guard by the door looked up. I lowered my voice, desperation clawing at my throat. "Please, my name is on the account. Look at the ID. I just need to see the balance. I'm not withdrawing anything. I just need to see it." Brenda sighed, a long, heavy exhale that told me I was the most annoying part of her day. "I can show you the summary screen, but I can't print it without the code." "Fine," I whispered. "Show me." She turned the monitor. I leaned in. I didn't look at the small numbers. I looked for the big one. And there it was. December 14th, 4 days ago. Outgoing wire transfer, Global Gems and Co. Amount $14,850. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just a number. It was the kitchen renovation. It was the baby furniture we never bought. It was the safety net I thought we had. Balance, I read aloud, $240. He had left us with $200. "Is that all?" Brenda asked, turning the screen back. "Yes," I said, stumbling back from the counter. "That's all." I walked out of the bank, the sunlight blinding me. He didn't just buy a necklace. He emptied us. He was betting everything on her. He was ready to leave me, or he was so arrogant he thought he could rebuild the savings before I noticed. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of the tires on the pavement and the roar of rage in my ears. When I pulled into the driveway, I didn't go inside. I stared at the garage door. The red toolbox was in there. The evidence was in there. I thought about packing a bag. I thought about taking the cat and driving to my mom's house in Florida. I could just disappear, leave a note on the counter. "I know about Elle. Have a nice life." But then I remembered the text. She won't know the difference. She doesn't take care of herself anymore anyway. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was a worn-out appliance he could keep in the corner while he played with his shiny new toy. If I left now, he would spin the story. He would tell everyone I was crazy, that I abandoned him. He would give Elle the sapphire necklace, and they would toast to their happiness with my money. No. I gripped the steering wheel until my leather gloves creaked. I wasn't going to be the victim who ran away. I was going to be the wife who stayed. I looked at the house I cleaned, the house I decorated, the house I paid for. "You want to buy me cheap lotion?" I whispered to the windshield. "Fine. Then you can give her cheap glass." The plan Drea and I joked about in the mall wasn't a joke anymore. It was the only way to balance the scales. I would take the necklace. I would replace it with a fake. I would let him give the fake to her. And when she found out, because a woman who demands sapphires checks her merchandise, she would dump him. And when he came crawling back to the roommate, I would be waiting with divorce papers and a pawnbroker's receipt. I checked the time. 2:30. Julian wouldn't be home until 8. I had to move. Now. I changed into sneakers. I needed to be quiet. I went into the garage, but this time I left the door open to let the natural light in. I didn't want to turn on the bulb and risk it burning out again or drawing attention. I went straight to the shelf. I moved the summer tires. I moved the box of holiday decor. I found the red toolbox. My heart was thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. I felt like a burglar. What if he came home early? What if he forgot a file? I unlatched the box. The velvet case was still there, nestled in the grease. I opened it one last time to make sure. The sapphires winked at me, blue and arrogant. "You're coming with me," I muttered. I took the velvet box out. I shoved it deep into the front pocket of my hoodie. It was bulky. It looked obvious. "Jade, is that you?" I froze. The voice came from the driveway. I spun around. Mrs. Gable, our 70-year-old neighbor, was standing at the edge of the garage, holding a casserole dish covered in foil. She was smiling, but her eyes were darting around the messy garage. "Oh, hi, Mrs. Gable," I said, crossing my arms over my chest to hide the bulge in my pocket. I tried to smile, but my face felt like a rigid mask. I was just looking for gardening shears. "In December?" She raised an eyebrow. "I brought over some lasagna. I saw Julian's car wasn't here, but I saw yours. Is everything all right? You looked upset when you drove in." She had been watching. Of course she had. "I'm fine," I said, my voice too high. "Just a headache. Migraine. You know how it is." "Well, you tell that handsome husband of yours to take better care of you," she said, stepping closer. She was trying to peer past me, into the garage. "Is he working late again? I saw him come home very late last night, and then leave again early." "He's very busy," I said, stepping forward to block her view of the toolbox I hadn't latched shut yet. "Thank you for the lasagna, Mrs. Gable. I really need to go lie down." I took the dish from her, the foil warm against my cold hands. I practically pushed her out of the driveway with my body language. "All right, dear, rest up," she said, looking offended. As soon as she turned her back, I sprinted inside. I locked the door. I leaned against it, gasping for air. I had the necklace. Now I needed a fake. Old Man Oscar's shop wasn't in the mall. It was in a strip mall on the bad side of town, sandwiched between a vape shop and a payday loan place. The windows were barred. The sign just said, "Watch Repair," in fading yellow letters. Drea met me there. She had left work early, claiming a family emergency. She looked at the hoodie pocket where I was clutching the box. "You got it?" she whispered. "I got it." We buzzed the door. A buzzer sounded, and we walked into a room that smelled of dust and silver polish. Oscar was behind a high counter, wearing a jeweler's loop on his forehead like a cyborg eye. He was a small man with hands that looked like gnarled roots. "Drea," he grunted. "Who's this?" "This is the friend I told you about," Drea said. "The emergency." I placed the blue velvet box on the counter. I opened it. Oscar didn't gasp. He just whistled low and long. He pulled the loop down over his eye and leaned in. He picked up the necklace with tweezers, examining the stones. "Nice," he murmured. "Very nice. Salon sapphires. Heated but high clarity. Diamonds are VS1, maybe VVS2. Whoever bought this spent a pretty penny." "Can you copy it?" I asked. "Exactly? So it looks real to a layperson?" Oscar looked up at me. His magnified eye was enormous and unsettling. "I can copy anything, darling. The question is time and materials. To make it look this good, I can't use plastic. I need high-grade cubic zirconia for the halo, and for the center, I have a synthetic spinel that's the right shade of blue. If I set it in silver and rhodium plate it, it'll pass for white gold." "How long?" 3 days, normally." "I have 2, I said. "I need it by Thursday morning." Oscar scratched his chin. "Rush job. That costs extra. I have to pull my other jobs." "How much?" "For the materials, the labor, and the rush." He calculated in his head. $600, cash. $600. I looked at Drea. She shrugged helplessly. "I don't have that kind of cash on me, Jade. I'm waiting on my commission check." I looked at Oscar. "Can I use a card?" He pointed to a sign on the wall. "Cash only, no checks, no credit." "Right," I said. "Okay, give me 5 minutes." I walked out of the shop and pulled out my phone. I had the $15 in my wallet. The bank account had $200. Even if I drained it, I was short. I tried to pull cash from the credit card at the ATM next to the vape shop. I stuck the card in. "PIN?" I typed it. Processing. Transaction declined. I stared at the screen. Declined. He had locked it. Or he had maxed it out. He had cut me off. He knew I might see the bank statement, so he preemptively cut my access to credit. He was starving me out. Panic flared in my chest, hot and sharp. I needed that fake. If I didn't switch the necklace back by tomorrow, he would know I took it. The plan would fail. I would just be a thief. I needed $600 in 10 minutes. I looked down at my hand. My left hand. I wasn't wearing my wedding band. I had taken it off to do the dishes yesterday and never put it back on. But on my right hand, I was wearing a small gold band with a tiny emerald. It wasn't from Julian. It was from Marcus, my boyfriend in college. He had given it to me when we thought we were going to get married before life took us in different directions. I kept it because it was pretty. Julian hated it. He called it tacky. I twisted it off my finger. It was 18-karat gold. The emerald was real. There was a pawn shop 3 doors down. We buy gold. I ran. I didn't think about the sentiment. I didn't think about Marcus. I thought about the text message. Clearance bin. I burst into the pawn shop. The guy behind the counter looked bored. How much for this? I slammed the ring on the glass. He picked it up, weighed it, looked at it. Scrap value? $150. Stone's too small to count. It's vintage, I lied. It's worth $500. $150, he repeated. I have earrings, I said, ripping the diamond studs out of my ears. Julian had given them to me for our 2nd anniversary. And these, he looked at the studs. Generic mall diamonds. I'll give you $400 for the lot. Ring and earrings. Make it $450, I bargained, my voice shaking. Please, I really need this. He looked at me. He saw the desperation. He sighed. Fine. $450. I had $150 in the bank I could withdraw at the counter if I begged Brenda. That was $600. Deal, I said. I watched him throw the ring, the only jewelry I had that was given with pure love, into a plastic bag. I watched him throw Julian's diamonds in with it. It felt like a cleansing. I was selling the past to buy my revenge. I took the cash. It was dirty and smelled like tobacco. I ran back to Oscar's. Here, I said, slapping the money on the counter. $600. Make it perfect. Oscar counted the bills. He nodded. Come back Thursday morning, he said. It'll be ready. The next 48 hours were a master class in psychological torture. The red toolbox in the garage was sitting there, latched but containing nothing but grease and air. If Julian decided to check on his investment, if he wanted just one more peek at the sapphires before the big day, I was dead. The entire plan would collapse. He would know I took it. He would know I sold my rings. He would turn it around and make me the thief. I spent Wednesday evening in a state of high-functioning panic. Every time Julian stood up from the couch, my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Is he going to the garage? Is he going to check? Babe, Julian said, standing up and stretching. He was wearing his relaxing clothes, designer sweatpants that cost more than my car payment. He looked good, rested. The guilt of the affair seemed to be agreeing with him. Where are you going? I asked, my voice too sharp. I was chopping vegetables for a salad I had no intention of eating. He looked at me, perplexed. Bathroom? Why? Do I need a hall pass? No, I forced a laugh. Just wondering if you wanted tea. I'm good, he said, walking past me. He paused and put a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and hot. You're so jumpy lately, Jade. You really need to work on your stress levels. It's making the house feel frantic. It's hard to relax here. Toxic benevolence. He was cheating on me, stealing our savings, and gaslighting me about the atmosphere I was creating. I'm sorry, I said, looking at the floor. Work is crazy. Maybe you should quit, he suggested, his tone dripping with fake concern. Take a few months off, focus on, finding yourself again. You used to be so fun. You used to be fun. Translation? You used to be ignorant. He walked away whistling. He was actually whistling. He was happy because tomorrow was the big day. Tomorrow he would give Elle the necklace. I waited until I heard the bathroom door lock before I exhaled. I had to survive one more night, just one more night of the empty box. Thursday morning, the day of the anniversary. His anniversary with her. I called in sick to work. I told my boss I had food poisoning. I sounded convincing because I actually felt sick. My stomach was a knot of acid and adrenaline. As soon as Julian's car pulled out of the driveway headed for his office or her apartment, I was out the door. I drove to Oscar's shop like I was escaping a crime scene. Oscar was waiting. He placed 2 velvet boxes on the counter. "Which is which?" he asked, a twinkle in his magnified eye. I looked. They were identical. The midnight blue velvet, the snap of the hinge. I opened them. On the left, the sapphires burned with that deep oceanic fire. On the right, they burned too. Maybe a little brighter, maybe a little too perfect. "The right one is the fake," I guessed. "Good eye," Oscar nodded. "The spinel is a bit more vivid than the natural stone. But in a restaurant? Under dim lights? Nobody will know. Unless she carries a jeweler's loop in her purse, she's going to think she's wearing a condo payment around her neck." I touched the fake necklace. It felt cold, heavy. It felt like justice. "And the real one?" I asked, pointing to the left box. "Yours to keep," Oscar said. "Be careful with that. Don't leave it in your car." I took both boxes. I felt a surge of power. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting. I was holding the strings. "Thank you, Oscar," I said. "You have no idea what you've done." "I think I do," he grunted. "Give him hell." I drove home with the precious cargo on the passenger seat. I pulled into the garage and closed the door immediately. I didn't want Mrs. Gable or anyone else seeing this. I went to the shelf. I pulled down the red toolbox. My hands were steady now. This was the moment. I opened the latch. The empty space where the box had been stared back at me. I took the box containing the fake necklace, the blue glass and cubic zirconia masterpiece that cost me my engagement ring, and nestled it into the grease tray. It fit perfectly. I adjusted the pliers so they framed it exactly as they had before. I closed the lid. Click. It was done. The trap was set. Now, the real one. I couldn't keep it in the house. If he found the fake, he might tear the place apart looking for the real one if he suspected a switch. But I couldn't leave it in the car either. I walked into the kitchen. I opened the freezer. It was a chaotic mess of half-eaten ice cream tubs and bags of vegetables we swore we'd eat. I took a bag of frozen peas. I opened the resealable top. I wrapped the real necklace, without the box, just the jewelry wrapped in a paper towel, in a layer of plastic wrap, then shoved it deep into the frozen peas. I resealed the bag and tossed it to the back of the freezer, behind a stack of frozen pizzas. Julian never cooked. He never touched the vegetables. It was the safest place in the world. I needed to know where he was going. I knew about the restaurant from the texts, but what if plans changed? What if they went to a hotel? I needed his phone one last time. He came home at 6 to change for a client dinner. He was rushing. He was agitated. "Where is my gray tie?" he shouted from the bedroom. "Jade, did you move my tie?" "It's on the rack, Julian," I yelled back from the living room. "Where it always is." He stormed out, wearing a towel, looking frantic. "It's not there. You always move things when you clean. Can you just—" He stopped. His phone was buzzing on the dresser. "I'll find it," I said, putting on my best helpful wife face. "Go check the dryer. Maybe it got mixed in." "Just find it," he snapped, running toward the laundry room. I had 10 seconds. I grabbed his phone. I typed 1535. It unlocked. I didn't look at texts this time. I didn't want to see them. I went straight to the browser. I typed in the URL for a family safety app, one I had installed on my phone earlier. I downloaded the hidden child tracker version on his. Install. Grant permissions. Always allow location. Hide icon. It took 8 seconds. "Found it!" Julian yelled from the laundry room. "It fell behind the machine." I dropped the phone back on the dresser just as he walked back in. My heart was in my throat, but I managed a smile. "Great," I said. "You better hurry. You don't want to be late for the client." He didn't notice a thing. He was too busy fixing his hair in the mirror, preening like a peacock. He left at 6:30. I watched the dot on my phone screen move away from the house. He stopped at the garage first. The dot lingered there for 3 minutes. I held my breath. He's getting the necklace. The dot moved again. He was on the highway. He had the fake. I waited 5 minutes, then ran to my car. I was wearing black jeans, a black turtleneck, and a baseball cap. I looked like a cat burglar or a celebrity trying to avoid paparazzi. I merged onto the highway, keeping a safe distance. The tracker showed he was heading downtown, toward the French Quarter. Le Jardin, the most expensive restaurant in the city, of course. I was 3 exits away when my car shuddered. A loud thump, thump, thump started coming from the front right tire. "No!" I screamed. "No, not now!" The steering wheel jerked in my hands. A flat tire. I had a blowout. I wrestled the car to the shoulder, cursing, screaming obscenities that would make a sailor blush. I beat the steering wheel with my fists. Why? Why does the universe hate me? I looked at the tracker. Julian was 10 minutes from the restaurant. I was stuck on the side of I-95 in the dark. I couldn't change a tire. I didn't have time. I grabbed my purse and jumped out of the car. I locked it. I started running toward the exit ramp. It was a mile away. I ran in my sneakers, the cold wind biting my face. I looked insane. Cars rushed past, buffeting me with wind. I didn't care. I had to see it. I got to the gas station at the bottom of the ramp. I called an Uber. Driver is 8 minutes away. "Hurry up," I whispered, pacing in front of the convenience store while the clerk watched me suspiciously. "Please hurry up." The Uber driver was a slow, chatty man named Greg who wanted to talk about the weather. I ignored him, staring at my phone. "Can you just drive?" I snapped. "I'll tip you $20 if you get me there in 10 minutes. Greg shut up and drove. We pulled up across the street from Le Jardin at 7:15. I threw the cash at him and bolted. I found a spot in a coffee shop directly across the street. The restaurant had floor-to-ceiling glass windows. It was a fishbowl of wealth. I scanned the tables. My breath fogged up the window of the cafe. There they were. Table 4, right by the window, Julian and her, Lola. She was stunning. I hated her instantly, viscerally. She was younger, maybe 25. She had long, sleek hair and was wearing a red dress that looked like it was painted on. She was laughing, throwing her head back, touching Julian's hand. Julian looked enamored. He looked at her the way he used to look at me 5 years ago. He was leaning in, listening to her like she was the only person in the world. It hurt. It hurt worse than the money. It was the intimacy. He was giving her my attention. He was giving her my husband. I watched as the waiter poured champagne. I watched Julian reach into his jacket pocket. Here it comes. He pulled out the blue velvet box. Lola clapped her hands. She actually clapped. She looked like a child on Christmas morning. Julian opened the box. Even from across the street, I saw the sparkle. The fake sapphires caught the candlelight and exploded with brilliance. Lola gasped. She covered her mouth. She reached out and touched the necklace reverently. I took a photo. Then another. Zoomed in. Gotcha. She turned around, lifting her hair. Julian stood up, the gentleman, the romantic, and fastened the clasp around her neck. She turned back to him, beaming. She touched the stones at her throat. She leaned across the table and kissed him. A long, passionate kiss that made the couple at the next table look away. I watched them. I watched my husband kiss his mistress while she wore a $600 necklace she thought was worth $15,000. "Enjoy it, Lola," I whispered, pressing my hand against the cold glass. "Enjoy the glass, because that's all you're worth to him, and that's all he's worth to you." I ordered a black coffee and sat there for an hour, watching them celebrate their lie. I felt cold, hollow, and absolutely terrified. But I also felt a grim satisfaction. The bomb was planted. Now I just had to wait for it to explode. 2 days later, December 19th, the actual anniversary. I managed to get my car towed to a local mechanic by paying the driver an extra $50 to keep his mouth shut about where he picked me up. I told Julian the alternator died while I was driving to the pharmacy for anti-nausea meds. He bought it. He was too distracted to care about my car troubles. He came home at 6:30 with a bouquet of grocery store carnations and a small, brightly colored bag. "Happy anniversary, babe," he said, leaning in for a kiss. He smelled of mouthwash, masking whatever he had been doing before he walked through the door. I forced myself not to recoil. "Happy anniversary." We sat on the couch. The air was thick with the lie. He handed me the bag. It crinkled cheaply. It was from a discount drugstore chain. "I know we said no big gifts this year," he said, putting on his serious, financially responsible face. "With the renovation savings and everything, I just wanted to get you something practical, something you'd actually use." I opened the bag. Inside was a 3-pack of body lotion, Winterberry Wonder. The price tag, $19.99, had been peeled off, but the sticky residue was still there. It was exactly what he told Lola he would buy, the clearance bin. My throat tightened. I wanted to throw the bottle at his head. I wanted to scream, "I know about the sapphires, I know about the 15 grand. But I didn't. I needed him to feel safe. I needed him to think he had won. "Oh, Julian," I said, forcing my voice to wobble with emotion. "You remembered I ran out of lotion." "I notice things," he said, patting my knee. "I know you don't care about jewelry and flashy stuff anymore. You're more down to earth now. I love that about you. You're low maintenance." Toxic benevolence. He was complimenting me for being cheap so he didn't have to feel guilty about spending our life savings on his mistress. "Thank you," I whispered. "It's perfect." I went to the kitchen to get water and stood over the sink, gripping the edge until my knuckles turned white, counting down the days until his world burned. It took 6 days. 6 days for Lola to take the necklace to an appraiser. 6 days for her to realize her sugar daddy was actually a Splenda daddy. I was sitting in the living room, laptop open, pretending to work, but actually researching divorce lawyers. It was 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. The front door didn't just open, it exploded inward. Julian stormed in. He wasn't wearing his jacket. His tie was undone. His face was a mask of purple rage. He looked like a man who had just been spat on. "That son of a bitch!" he screamed, kicking the ottoman. "That lying, thieving con artist!" He paced the room, running his hands through his hair. He was hyperventilating. "Julian?" I asked, standing up slowly. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I've been robbed," he shouted. "I've been scammed." "I paid $15,000 for glass. Blue glass." He stopped. He realized what he had said. The room went dead silent. I tilted my head. "You paid $15,000? For what, Julian?" He froze. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit ramp. He licked his lips. "Investments," he stammered. I bought a batch of vintage watches for resale, a side hustle, to surprise you with the profit." "Watches," I repeated. "Yes, watches. And I just found out the seller sold me fakes. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to the police." "You can't go to the police," I said calmly. "Why the hell not? It's grand larceny." "Because," I said, reaching for my phone on the coffee table, "it's hard to file a police report for a necklace you bought for your mistress with stolen marital funds." Julian stopped breathing. He looked at me like I had just spoken in tongues. "What?" he whispered. I unlocked my phone. I didn't say a word. I just turned the screen toward him. Photo 1, the text message about the roommate. Photo 2, The text about the clearance lotion. Photo 3. The picture of him putting the necklace on Lola at Le Jardin. He stared at the screen, his face drained of color, turning a sickly gray. He collapsed onto the sofa like his strings had been cut. "Jade," he choked out. "Jade, wait, I can explain. Can you explain why you called me a roommate?" I asked, my voice steady and cold. "Can you explain why you spent our house money on a 20-year-old? It was a mistake," he babbled, tears starting to well up in his eyes. "She meant nothing. It was just a midlife thing. I was stressed. She made me feel appreciated. But she's crazy, Jade. She just dumped me. She threw a drink in my face because she thought the necklace was fake." "The necklace is fake, Julian," I said. He looked up, confused. "Yeah, the jeweler ripped me off." "That's what I'm saying." "No," I said, shaking my head. "The jeweler didn't rip you off. I did." I walked to the kitchen. He followed me, stumbling like a drunk man. I opened the freezer. I pushed aside the frozen pizza. I grabbed the bag of frozen peas. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice trembling. I ripped the bag open. I pulled out the plastic-wrapped bundle. I unwound it. The real sapphire necklace spilled into my hand, catching the kitchen light. It was heavy, cold, and magnificent. "I found it in the garage," I said. "I swapped it. You gave Lola a $600 replica made of cubic zirconia. I have the $15,000 original." Julian stared at the necklace, then at me. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You," he whispered. "You stole it?" "I repossessed it," I corrected. "I pawned my engagement ring to pay for the fake, so technically I paid for her gift too." The silence didn't last long. Julian's shock turned into indignation. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my mother," he threatened. "You can't do this. You can't just steal my property." "Call her," I said. "Tell her what you did." He did. 20 minutes later, Patricia was pounding on our door. She lived 10 minutes away and had a key, which I had been asking Julian to take back for 3 years. She marched in, clutching her pearls, looking from Julian to me. Julian was sobbing on the couch now, playing the victim. "Jade!" Patricia barked. "What is this nonsense? Julian says you stole his investment, and you're accusing him of impropriety?" "He cheated, Patricia," I said. "He spent $15,000 on a mistress." "Men have needs." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "If he strayed, you need to look at yourself. Have you been attentive? Have you kept yourself up? He says you've been distant." Toxic benevolence. It ran in the family. "He called me a roommate," I said. "He emptied our savings." "So you work it out!" Patricia yelled. "You don't steal. Give him the necklace. He needs to return it to get the money back. You are ruining this family over a moment of weakness." She reached for my hand, trying to pry the necklace loose. Her nails dug into my skin. "Give it to me, Jade. Stop being dramatic. You're hysterical." Something inside me snapped. The overthinking engine shut down. The polite wife died. "Get out," I said. "Excuse me?" Patricia gasped. "Get out of my house," I screamed, grabbing a vase from the counter and smashing it on the floor. Shards of glass flew everywhere. "Both of you, get out, now!" "You're crazy," Julian muttered, backing away. "I am crazy," I yelled. "I am the crazy woman who has the photos, the bank statements, and the sapphires, and tomorrow morning my lawyer gets all of it. Now get the hell out before I call the cops and report a domestic disturbance." They left. Julian grabbed his coat. Patricia grabbed her purse. They ran out the door like rats fleeing a sinking ship. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I put the chair under the handle. Then I sat on the floor amidst the broken glass and the frozen peas, clutching the sapphire necklace to my chest, and I finally laughed. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I went to a lawyer Drea recommended, a shark named Ellen who wore red lipstick and terrifying shoes. I put everything on her desk, the necklace, the photos, The bank records. He wants half the value of the necklace, I told her. He says it's marital property. Ellen looked at the photos of Julian giving the necklace to Lola. She smiled, and it was the sharpest thing I'd ever seen. Dissipation of assets, she said. He spent marital funds on an extramarital affair. In this state, the judge will deduct that entire amount from his share of the assets, and since he tried to give it away, we can argue he forfeited his claim to it. So I keep it? You keep it, Ellen said. And we're going for the house, too, since he likes living with his mother so much. The divorce took 3 months. Julian tried to fight. He tried to claim I entrapped him. He tried to claim I hacked his phone illegally, but the bank statements didn't lie. The withdrawal was there. The photos were there. And Lola? Lola was the final nail in the coffin. She posted a TikTok about being scammed by a corporate fake that went semi-viral locally. She tagged him. It didn't help his career. I didn't watch the video. Drea told me about it. I packed up the last of his boxes and left them on the curb. The house was quiet. The garage was empty. I had thrown the red toolbox in the trash. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the spot where I used to cook him roast chicken while he texted another woman. I felt lighter. I felt broke, terrified, and lonely. But I felt clean. I touched my neck. I wasn't wearing the sapphires. They were in a safety deposit box waiting to be sold when the market was right. I was wearing a simple silver chain I bought for myself. No more roommates, I whispered to the empty room. Update, 3 months later. It's been 90 days since the night of the frozen peas. Life is different. The divorce was finalized last week. Julian settled. He was terrified of the text messages becoming public record in a trial, especially since his company has a morality clause. He let me keep the remaining equity in the house to buy my silence. I sold the necklace. I didn't want to keep it. It had bad juju. I took it to a different jeweler, not Oscar, someone fancy downtown, and got $12,000 for it. Not the full 15, but enough. I used the money to pay off the legal fees and replace the savings he stole. I also bought myself a new engagement ring, a vintage emerald just like the one I pawned. It's on my right hand. A promise to myself never to ignore the red flags again. As for Julian, he's living in Patricia's basement. Drea heard from a mutual friend that he's trying to get back into the dating scene, but it's hard when you live with your mother and have a reputation for giving fake jewelry. Lola actually sent me a DM on Instagram last week. She wrote, "Hey, I heard what you did with the swap. Honestly, respect. He was a loser anyway." I didn't reply. I blocked her. I don't need closure from the other woman. I got my closure in the garage with a pair of pliers and a piece of blue glass. I'm currently sitting on my own couch, watching a movie I picked, eating pizza I ordered, with no one complaining about the smell or the cost. The smoke detector chirped yesterday. I bought a ladder, I bought a battery, and I fixed it myself. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.